Pinellas County, we're having to balance the rising cost of housing with the twin goals of building more affordable housing and preserving our industrial and target employment lands in a highly developed county. So we have some unique challenges that we're trying to wrestle with, and I believe we'll talk about that more in a little bit. We know that all of this takes strong partnerships to handle and address these issues effectively. And that's why we've been excited to partner with Pinellas County and several of our local governments on a countywide housing compact under our Advantage Pinellas vision framework. And I know Commissioner Gerard will talk about that a little bit more in a minute. You know, I think the perspective of county governments is particularly important because counties reflect a real diversity of our region. Their geography spans the gamut from rural areas, small towns, subdivisions, commercial centers to downtowns, and environmentally from uplands to beaches to wetlands to other natural areas. So it's a real challenge, I think, for counties to deal with that diversity. Cities are a little bit more focused, and cities have tended to be at the forefront of a lot of our housing initiatives. But state law grants counties really wide powers or broad powers and authority, taxation, redevelopment areas, transportation funding, all those kinds of things. And so that's why it's really important that counties be a key part of this dialogue. So this morning, we're going to have a conversation with 4 representatives from our Bay Area counties about aligning affordable housing and their resilience efforts. We'll hear from Commissioner Pat Gerard of Pinellas County, Commissioner Kathryn Starkey from Pasco County, Commissioner George Kruse from Manatee County, and Commissioner Kimberly Overman from Hillsborough County. So I'm just going to ask a few questions, and I'll start with Commissioner Gerard, and I hope that each of you will follow on and weigh in on these questions. Talk about some of the housing affordability challenges in Pinellas County and what initiatives Pinellas County is working on to support housing.
Well, I thought you wanted me to talk about the compact, but okay, Whit. Well, I think we've all heard about the challenges. We know, I'm not a data person, so I'm not going to spout a bunch of statistics at you, but you know, one of the things that, and I'm just going to pivot right to the compact.
Sure.
When we ask developers, what is their biggest headache? I bet most of you could tell us because you're all in the biz. And it has to do with the fact, particularly in Pinellas County, it has to do with the fact that we have so many jurisdictions that they have a different set of rules for every place they go. Different set of incentives, a different set of codes. It's like very frustrating. And I think a lot of times they just throw up their hands and just say, I think I'll go to Hillsborough or somebody or someplace else. So we are working on a housing compact that at current time has St. Pete, Clearwater, Largo, and the county working together on coming up with some commonalities. I think we're going to be inviting developers to come to work with us and other sort of non-governmental entities, but we're going to work on things like pre-approved plans and expedited review and common incentives, codes, policies, standards, all sorts of things. It says here we're going to have a housing summit in 2023, in the spring of 2023. I'm hoping the compact doesn't take that long because nothing is fast enough. We talked about this on a Zoom call the other day. Nothing is as fast as I want it to be. And those people who work in housing know that I've said this a million times. Why does it have to take so long? And someday I'm gonna do a work along and see why it takes so long. I'm sure there's an answer to that. So one of I think it's been mentioned before that Pinellas County set aside a couple of years ago money in this renewal of the Penny for Pinellas for affordable housing over the next 10 years. We have like $85 million plus. I mean, we have some that was left over. We have some from other areas. And so far in the last couple of years, we've approved 9 projects, which only comes to 878 units, but every little bit helps. We have several more under active review right now that will be about 500 more units. And we're taking new applications all the time. So if you're an affordable housing developer, please come talk to us. Because we're ready and willing to help. I think there's a huge need and we're ready.
Great. Commissioner Kruse, how would you respond to what Manatee County is working on to address housing affordability?
Sure. And yeah, we just had a Zoom Monday, maybe beginning of this week. We were even joking. I mean, our whole panel is 45 minutes and we were on that Zoom for over an hour. And it was just a great conversation. We said we should just recorded this thing and put it up on the screen because what you realize is everyone's in the same position. And we may have different aspects of it. Some counties are larger, some have more municipalities, but we're all, and everyone in the state of Florida and the country for that matter, is in the same position of how do you encourage and support and create affordable, attainable workforce housing for our community. And there's no silver bullet. If there was, we'd all be doing the same thing and we solve the problem. But it's great to hear from other counties, one, just to kind of reaffirm, hey, we're not just completely incompetent in Manatee County. Everyone's in the same position and we're all working towards it. But some of these things like the compact, for instance, that Commissioner Gerard talked about, we've got 6 municipalities within Manatee County. We're only 400,000 people or so. And we have 6 different municipalities, 2 of them large where our affordable type housing would otherwise go. And that's a dynamic we're working on right now. We've been having joint meetings with those municipalities because we see the same issues, because it's not just about throwing money at it because there's only so many dollars you can throw at a problem. It's also about how can government facilitate developers coming in? How can we make it easier for people to develop this affordable housing that our communities and our citizens need? So we started seeing some of the problems I think everyone sees. For instance, we have City of Bradenton, and we just saw that map that just came up the last panel. And City of Bradenton, all that bright red you saw straight down that line when Manatee County was used as the example. That's City of Bradenton. But that red transcends past the city lines down into unincorporated Manatee County. But if you're a developer and you go from one side of that line to the other, we have completely different codes and zoning and ability to build. We make it more complicated than it needs to be. We have stringent restrictions relative to unit sizes and setbacks and density and height. I think in today's day and age, where we stand right now, housing has to be a priority. I don't care what zone I don't care what it's zoned for. I don't care what the height is. We need to be working with our developers and saying, what do you need? We're going to provide it. Because it can't just be, here's some more money, because there's only so many times you can dip your hand into that till. So that's what we're working on in Manatee County, is structuring our regulations, in large part just by lowering the regulations to encourage this development, not just with ourselves, but in conjunction with our municipalities. And so we just proposed, and we're working on ordinance right now for half dwelling units, where if you build me smaller units, it's half impact fees, half parking ratio, half density, to encourage smaller units, because as a previous panel discussed, there's naturally occurring. And yes, the example given was older stock, a little more obsolete type units, but there's also naturally occurring just because if the unit's small enough, whether it's a tiny home or a 500 square foot studio, I think we're past the point where everyone feels the need to have more space. We kind of went on that trend for a while where 1-bedroom apartments started being a 1-bedroom with an eat-in kitchen and a den. It was 1,100 square feet. And you saw that with housing as well. The average housing went from sub 2,000 square feet to into the 2,000s, and some markets over 3,000 square feet. I think right now, people need a roof over their head. They need a roof over their head that their wages can support. And this isn't an issue that's going to come and go in 6 months. This probably isn't an issue that's going to come and go in 6 years. So we need to start working on our regulations as a government and working with the developers today, because this is going to be a long-term issue for all of us, because inflation has completely reset the housing market. The influx of people into the state of Florida has permanently adjusted the supply demand imbalance. And if we don't start fixing regulations and working with developers today for units that aren't going to come out of the ground for 12 to 24 months, then we're just going to be further and further behind the ball, just like we were in 2009, 10, 11, 12, when virtually nothing was built. It was almost a self-imposed moratorium for lack of financing for anyone to build anything. And all of us are digging ourselves out of that hole. Manatee County from 2009 through 2018, I believe, we only averaged 2,300 residential permits, but we were seeing 10,000 new people a year. We required 4,000 new housing units per year to break even. Forget roommates moving out and kids moving out of the house. Just for the inflow, we were about 1,500 plus units short for half a decade. We're still digging out of that hole. You're all still digging out of that hole. We need to start working together to get rid of the regulations, start encouraging density where density needs to be, start encouraging smaller units that become effectively affordable. That's what Manatee County is working on. And we just had a long meeting on it. We have a lot of ideas if we want to talk about it. We did during the Zoom, but that's the direction we're going, is trying to work with our developers to build us what our community needs, more so than just throwing money at it, because that's going to be a short-term solution to a long-term problem.
Thank you. Commissioner Starkey, I've been fascinated with the amount of growth and change in Pasco County. Talk a little bit about how that has challenged you and what you're doing to make sure housing is affordable in your county.
Sure. Okay, this is on. Yeah, you know, Pasco years ago was a blue collar county where we had a lot of retirees move down. They built one car garage, 2-bedroom houses on the 19 corridor in the Holiday area. That's the most dense area of our county. And of course, you're seeing now growth go all the way across. But life is changing in Pasco County, and even those homes are not affordable anymore. And so it's a real challenge for us. And back in the day when we were first having our first development boom, we were doing DRIs. And back then, when you had a development of regional impact, 10% of that product had to be affordable housing. And when we did away with those regulations here in the state, we didn't add that back into our development rules. So, so therefore, we have in all our new construction, no affordable housing, and most of our county is now new construction. So we have that challenge, plus the older, smaller homes, which actually happen to be in the area where sea level rise is going to impact them. We have them being priced out. So I've been doing research in Palm Beach County, actually, in any new development. I think 5% of any new development of homes has to be affordable. So I think if we can all start putting those back into our regulations, we kind of take a little bite of the apple. But I want to talk about a few things. First, I want to tell you about a few of the housing projects that we have coming that I think are kind of creative. We have 77 rental units for disabled veterans coming. We have 50 rental units of permanent supportive housing coming. And these are groups that have a really hard time finding a place to live. We have some more transitional housing coming in. And of course, you all know about the money that Habitat got. So we're working closely with Habitat to take some of our properties and get some of our folks into those projects. But one of the ones I'm really excited about is one that we're just starting to talk about, and that is on a school district property. So we've been doing an inventory of property owned by either the school district, the community college, or the county, and seeing which acreage there can be put into housing developments. And we have a national builder talking to us about putting 300 to 400 units on acreage that the school district does not need. And when you're able to put in the land costs, they will extend the life of the restrictions on that project. And we're talking going from 30 years to 50 years. So we're real excited about that. So that's one of the things we're doing in Pasco County. I just went to the ULI conference in San Diego, and I took the creative affordable housing tour. And one of the things you talked about is what they hit on that tour. And we visited a project called Parco, and you can look it up, PARCO. And it's an affordable housing project that was built with no government funding. And it's affordable because they did micro units. And they have 94 micro units, and it all comes furnished. And when you need your bed, you press a button and it comes down from the wall and it folds over the sofa. And yeah, and they filled up within weeks of opening. So and they used private money, and it wasn't an opportunity zone, so they had opportunity fund. It's been open for 6 months. And the private equity money is already flipping. They're already getting their return. So they are looking for more projects to do like this. They also had some units in that complex where you rent the bedroom, you know, shared living, co-living, like my kids did in college. Well, they have a bunch of units that have co-living. And I think that's a brilliant idea for getting more affordable housing. But some of the other things that I learned there are pretty striking. So from the National Home Builders Association, the average cost for regulations in a home is $93,000 right off the top. And I would guess that in Florida, it might be a little more because of our hurricane restrictions. And I don't know how we get around that. And since 2020, lumber increases have added $35,000 to the cost of a home. So you're talking, you know, you're near 140,000 before you put anything in the ground. So this is I just don't know how how this is gonna go in the future. But ADUs, we're going after accessory dwelling units, and we're saying if you want to have them, we won't charge you impact fees for those, and we won't hit you with a density. You know, you can add them all day long. So those are some of the things that we're
Very
trying
good.
to work in.
Well, let's hear from the largest county in our region, Hillsborough County. Commissioner Overman.
Yes, I think there is some value in looking at some of the differences and similarities in what we do that do present opportunities, but also some serious challenges. Hillsborough County is 1,000 square miles, 1.5 million, although probably 6 as of day before yesterday, because we have about 200 people a day moving into Hillsborough County. We also have only 3 municipalities, so it is a little easier to try and create some symbiotic relationships on land and zoning, although there does seem to be this, 20-foot wide concrete wall between all the partners. So sometimes we have to really pound on it to get it through. But the other good thing is, we had a lot of land. So there was a desire to, waive the fees. Housing's most important. Let's go there. But what we ran into was the infrastructure cost when we spread that out. We do have, as you saw with the resiliency map, a lot of our projects are quite spread across the entire county to some degree, which creates opportunities to spread out your risk to vulnerable communities. But then it also spreads out the cost of providing services, addressing the transportation challenges, as well as recognizing some of the other things that we fight. For example, septic to sewer conversion costs in areas where it is also very vulnerable. So the opportunity in our case is to try and figure out how to get the kinds of funding actually that Pinellas has with its penny for Pinellas. Our board has chosen to make a commitment of $10 million a year that recurs and rolls over as it's used. And over the last 3.5, 4 years since we chose to do that, we've gotten about 1,600 units built with those dollars. So that really, really helped a great deal. A lot more of them have occurred in the last 2 years in spite of the fact that distribution channels and access and COVID certainly made it very difficult to move some things forward. But we're making good progress on adding as many units as we possibly can and putting them in the smart places. What we also discovered by not really paying attention to where we were putting things is that the link between transit availability and affordability is now written in stone on our future in Hillsborough County. Without having a robust transit system to reduce the household expense by $10,000 to $20,000 a year, which is what 2 cars would cost a household, roughly, the affordability factor, drops or increases. Drops significantly when you have to take into consideration that the only way to get around Hillsborough County right now is with a car. I mean, our 30 routes that we have for our bus system, 20 of them are the only ones that have between 15 and 20 minute service. Yeah, that's correct. 20 of them are 1 hour intervals. 10 of them are under 15 to 20 minutes. So if your car breaks down in Hillsborough County, you lose your ability to take care of your family, or you lose the opportunity to have a job. You lose the opportunity to go to school. So there are, in our case, transit availability and community building became the biggest hurdle that we had to deal with. So when we look at resiliency, we're in the process of actually doing that in a robust way. Not only were we recently developed a affordable housing density bonus that included all of those factors. Is it attached to transit? Is it in an urban area? What kind of density is required? How do we expedite processing for affordable housing projects in order to deal with the cost of money and the delay and the other impacts, social impacts in a community, which is critically important in our area. And the reason it is a little different than some of our counties is that Hillsborough County on average age demographic is lower than the rest of the United States. We're actually the largest population age demographic in Hillsborough County is not only under 21, so a 1-bedroom unit is not going to do a family any good unless you're all sleeping on the couch in the hallway. But is between the ages of 21 and 35. Those are of adults. That's the years that we're formulating households. That's the years that we're possibly having our first set of children and we're looking for daycare and we're trying to get to work. So it is, how we address that social cost of not having rents affordable with a 36% increase in the last 6 months of our rents.
Right.
Is a huge challenge.
I'd like to
But
get,
the good news, we're doing good stuff.
Yeah.
We've got, as I mentioned, 1,600 properties.
Yep.
We have a ton of programs and 30 active projects in the queue. When we have about 8 or 9, if I'm not mistaken, and sort of in that pre-development, thinking about it, we got to get that partner in the queue. And we have, while we don't typically waive too much in the way of impact fees and mobility fees, we will if transit is available to be able to service it. So as we focus on our transportation revenue stream, hopefully with a referendum that comes forward in November, it will make a difference in us being able to be successful in affordable housing.
I think you touched on a really important point, and as former chair of PSTA and a transit rider, do you have any thoughts on that, Commissioner Gerard?
Well, current chair of PSCA.
Yeah, right, current chair.
Yes, I just wanted to offer that Pinellas County is willing and ready to work with Hillsborough County on regional transit, and I think,
So is Pasco.
yeah.
And
I knew you were
we
gonna
all
say
saw
that.
over on the transit agencies.
Because we do
Lisa,
have a
sir,
lot of
you're on the
people that
transit
go back
agency.
and
I'm the
forth.
vice chair.
Well, there you go.
And Kathryn and I are both on, is it TBARTA, no TMA,
Well,
for
we
regional
need to get
transit.
together.
So we're working together on it.
Yeah, good.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
So another session that I went to in San Diego was micromobility. And San Diego has really done kind of a road diet in the county and added a lot of lanes for those using different types of scooters and
Right.
whatever kind of means they want to get to work. And I watched it in action for 3 days in a row with people using those lanes. But we did a micromobility tour, which I had no idea it meant I was going to be on a scooter. So I had to run and take my
got you
suitcase,
on a
my bag and my iPad back up to my room. But we did it on scooters. Mine actually had a chair, so that was kind of cool. But we went and learned about a project they have called FRED, Free Rides Every Day or something. I don't remember what the D stands for. Maybe Free Rides for Everyone. And they have maybe 20 glorified golf carts, electric golf carts. They have roofs and dividers for COVID stuff, but anybody in town, they have an app, you can call it up, you can ride anywhere. And I took it actually to go get my rental car when I needed to rent one to go visit my aunt. But they said it saved a lot of parking spaces because people don't need cars. Interesting, in San Diego, they live downtown and they commute out of the city to work. So a lot of people leave their cars out on the skirts, but it was very interesting. And we are actually in the middle of a micromobility study in the Dade City area, and I hope to bring it to Holiday. But if you can get your household down to one car or no car, then more of that money can go back into rent and mortgage payments. So I think with technology, it could be a way of the future.
And I think that's why having all the governmental entities really putting their heads together when it marries transportation, but also land use. As Hillsborough County is launching any minute now. No, actually, no, it's going to take a little longer, but we've been working with the Florida Housing Coalition on the Community Land Trust to do land banking because I anticipated, the economist in me lost her brain 2 years ago and went, oh my God, we got to go buy land now. And sure enough, we needed to buy land 2 years ago. But the Community Land Trust idea is an excellent way of marrying your transit planning, your buying, and your urban planning. And that is a very, very helpful way of addressing getting there. But the reason it becomes even more important is that zoning, community land trust buying, we're discovering that we're getting a different type of NIMBY. We're getting, even on naturally occurring housing, affordable housing being proposed, is no, don't put it there. Our traffic will get miserable. No, you can't build there. Don't put it there. Okay, when it's appropriate in our planning. So we're having to address not necessarily the income NIMBY issue or the perception of housing and what affordable means, but also the real pushback because there's not enough transportation infrastructure there.
How do you respond to that pushback? How are you dealing with that? That's probably pervasive in each of the counties.
I will tell you, it's a wall that I'm climbing over in November.
And I wanted to say something about NIMBYism because frankly, we all see it. And it's up to us, the elected officials, to have the backbone to say, we're going to do this. I mean, I think there are ways to ameliorate whatever kind of challenges people think it's going to bring to their neighborhood. I've actually had people complain and say, don't put that Habitat house next to me, right. Which I think, if you ever saw one, what is wrong with that? And I think we just have to push back on that.
Commissioner Kruse?
Yeah, and we all deal with this every day. In fact, I dealt with this yesterday. We had a land use meeting and somebody owned land as of right based on future land use. They could put an apartment complex in front of land for his own development. He had, in fact, the development's only about 25% sold out. So they're taking the risk of putting a multifamily property in front of houses they ultimately have to sell. So there's a vested interest. But there was a lot of people and they all show up in the same color shirt and they sit in front of me and tell me why this is a terrible idea and name everything from active shooters to you name it. I mean, they're like, it's 4 stories. They can oversee other houses. And Like, they'll come up with anything to not build by them. Everyone agrees that we need a good school system, but nobody seems to agree that your kid's teacher should be living next to you. Your kid's teacher should be living someplace else because that's where they can afford a place to live. Everyone needs safety, but no one wants the police and the first responders next to them because those houses are conducive, either because they're too small or they're subsidized. You're never going to please anybody. Our job up here, everyone's job in this room, is to make your community the best community it can be. And sometimes, to the Chris's point, you just got to put your head down and do it, because your community is going to be stronger with a strong education system because you got good teachers, and because it's safe and low crime because you got first responders and your police there. And everyone wants to go to a restaurant and not see that sign, which we all see on the door at Panera's and any place else you go, we're closed for lunch for lack of staffing. Why? Because nobody can live any place anymore. And if we keep kicking the can down the road and appeasing everyone who doesn't want it next to them, nobody wants it next to anyone. I could try to propose an affordable housing project next to an affordable housing project, and the people in the first affordable housing project are going to show up in red shirts and tell me why it's a terrible idea. That's just what's going to happen. Unless somebody shows up and says, I'm building a Chick-fil-A in your neighborhood, they're going to complain about it. So you just have to do it. It's a bite the bullet, and there's going to be some people that are upset with it, but our job up here is not to appease 100% of the people. You're never going to appease 100% of the people on anything you do. Our job is to make the community the best it can be, and hope every 4 years or whatever it is, enough people understand we're making a positive difference for the good of the community as a whole.
Commissioner Starkey.
So I'm very proud to say I have 100% voting record on affordable housing in my county. But it's interesting, if you've been reading the papers, we just finished a moratorium on multifamily in a large part of our county. That one of our commissioners was very sure that his area was oversaturated. But the fact is, our multifamily that's coming in Pasco County, it's not affordable.
Right.
Those are all Class A apartments, and my daughter rents a cute little house in South Tampa, and her rent, 2-bedroom house, is less than a 1-bedroom apartment in Trinity. So it's the NIMBYism thing is alive and well, and in my opinion, affordable housing units shouldn't be, complexes shouldn't be large. They should be smaller and interspersed all throughout the communities and all throughout the county, and you'll have less of these reactions. And I think I've always thought it was better to have a community where income people who lived in certain kind of housing weren't segregated from, you have your $300,000 house street, and then your 500,000 and your 1 million, and they're all behind gates, and everyone's living segregated. We're developers, our family, or have been. Right now we're blueberry farmers, but it's another story. We built a neighborhood called Longleaf, and it has all different kinds of housing options in there, and garages over the apartments, and it's a very strong, vibrant community, and all kinds of people with all kinds of income levels live in there. And for me, that builds a better, stronger community when you have that kind of building going on.
We've got just a few more minutes left. This conference is really about collaboration and taking things to the next level. Is there one thing that you would like to see the region work on together that ties us together around these topics?
I think regionally, because people are working where they're living or living where they're working or not, that's where it becomes incredibly important that we recognize that how our region is built, given that we have one side of it is all water, we have to create some opportunity to link that transportation and a community building together in order to be able to recognize that there is limited space. For example, Pinellas has a much different scenario than I do. When I have a preference policy that any public land that we have available for affordable housing gets first dibs on that. And that is because we recognize we want to make sure that we're using existing development. But in our case, because the demographics are a little different, doesn't change the fact that we still have to create connectivity. A very large percentage of the people who actually work in Hillsborough live in Pasco. And we're seeing more of them moving to Hernando. right? And so if we don't create connectivity in our transportation and urban planning and resilience, we're going to have a problem. The other issue is the issue of NIMBYism plays a part in the condition of housing and the materials we use and the inspection process. Multifamily housing is regulated in the state of Florida by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation if there are more than 5 units. And they typically are just looking at structural issues. But HUD has a checklist to make sure that the repairs and standards are met. But there is no requirement to actually check the box that there's mold in the apartment, or mold on the facility. They're usually looking for other awful things. But when there is mold an issue, there's no, the laws across the board are silent.
Okay.
So where we can work together on those standards for fair housing and safe housing, I think is going to be critical to our future.
So some consistency and higher standards.
Exactly.
Commissioner Starkey, anything you want to see the region accomplish?
Well, I think I would go back to that transit issue, because I think having a regional transit program is critical for the Tampa Bay area. Also, something that I think is very important is workforce training. And some of the people in here in this room know I spend a lot of time on that, especially in the manufacturing world. But I would say that in Pasco County, we gave $1 million of our federal money to Career Source for a special program for workforce training, because if you have a good job, you can pay that rent. And so we really, really take seriously upskilling our residents so that they can have a good job.
Okay.
And so I would say to Tampa Bay, let's really, really concentrate on helping people who have the ability to work, to help them have a good job and a good career.
Commissioner Kruse, anything resonate there with you?
Yeah, two things, Orange. One is things like this. I mean, we're all in the same position. And if I come out and say Manatee County needs to build more and you just need to keep your mouth shut, then I get yelled at, because everyone thinks that whatever county you live in is the worst county in the world, and their commissioners are the worst commissioners in the world. And they're going to move across the line where they don't build anything and it's pristine and there's cows on every corner. It's just factually incorrect. So having more of a broader regional, almost for lack of a better term, educational system to just explain to people, this is what we need to do. It's not unique to Manatee County or to Pasco or Hillsborough or Pinellas or anybody else surrounding us. This is a Florida situation due to inflow, and we're working for the best we can do for our constituents, because we all have the 0 state income tax. We all have the sun. We all have the beaches. It's just what we're providing, which is bringing people here. So education helps, and there's no use in reinventing the wheel. Having multiple counties in one region all work together to come up with some sort of just educating everybody is beneficial. The second thing is, I 100% agree, connectivity. We all kind of have our own little areas and we don't all commute to each other's counties on a regular basis, but transportation is money. Just like we were talking about the transit. Now that's your transportation to employment is effectively housing cost, because the further you live from your services, the further you live from your employment base, the further you live from your kids' school, the more it costs you. And the further I push somebody out, the harder I make it for them to get to where they need to go. It just puts them further and further into a housing burden situation. So if we can work, because I have people in Manatee County who work in Hillsborough, they go up to South Hillsborough to Riverview and Apollo Beach, and they go to downtown Tampa. The harder I make it for them to get there, the more costly I make it for them to get there, the worse off they're going to be. So I think there is some uniformity here, whether it's on the water with connected water taxis, or it's light rail systems, or it's better transportation on road systems outside of 75, because there's one accident, you're stuck there.
Yep.
You know, that's an important component to bringing the entire Tampa Bay region together, because I think if we can make it easier for people to get from one place to the other, people can live from one place to another, and it broadens out their housing options and their employment options.
Thank you. Commissioner Gerard, final word.
Well, it's hard to argue with that. Especially as a bus rider, I have to say, we need to start acting like the urban region that we are and focusing on transportation. I mean, the idea that we're all going to go get in a car and drive around the county after this is pretty absurd. I mean, given the density and the number of people that are moving in here, we should have started planning, of course, 30 years ago, but we didn't. And now's the day.
I think we've been planning. It's the implementation that we've struggled
Well,
with.
but you know, we have the resources for what our priorities are, and this needs to be a priority.
All right, well, let's give it up for our county commissioners. Thank you very much.